Hello everyone, welcome to Jimmy's Bookshelf. Today we're going to talk about the real villain in Emma. So in Emma, we have many characters who are kind of dislikable, and to me at least. And I read this for the second time ever this month. So I was going in and then I realized that the real villain wasn't who I thought he was after the fact. And I said you're right, so I don't think it's Emma. But I do think that Emma, being the narrator, can skew our perception of who the villain is. I don't think the villain is Elton, because Elton, in my perception, did everything right. He thought he was courting Emma. He thought he was paying attention to her, so he did everything correctly. And that is okay. But I do think that he is not a great person. I don't think I'd want to be going to his church after they treated Harriet. And that's just because he was embarrassed, which means he's not a great person, but I don't think he's a villain. I think a villain in this book is Frank Churchill. So Frank Churchill, in my opinion, is the villain because of how he treats Jane Fairfax in particular, but also how he treats Emma and how he shows everyone else his true character. And I think that there is an argument to be made for how he actually shows this perception of him off. And I think it's really telling the way he acts and the way his actions show himself, because he says a lot of pretty words, but he doesn't always act those pretty words out. So it's just interesting. I'm going to go off of his actions, not how people have said about him, because honestly, with Emma, things are often misunderstood. And because we read the book through her eyes, we're not going to be doing this. And in case I didn't say, or you didn't take a guess, we will be going into spoilers. So my first reason for thinking that he is not good at the very least is because he promises things he does not or cannot keep. So the first of which is obviously he keeps promising to come to Highbury and he cannot come. Now I know that this is not necessarily in his control, as his aunt does keep him away, but he keeps promising even though he knows that he's not his own man essentially at this time. So I do think that this is showing of him, even though he is not kept back by his own accord. Another part of his character that I think shows how much of a villain he can be is when he constantly and without fail seems to dig at Jane Fairfax and how she can be in love with Mr. Dixon. He knows that she's in love with him. He is her fiance. They are hiding it, but they are engaged, and he knows that. And so he's constantly, without fail, digging at her, and he is making all these jokes with Emma, and he is doing it publicly. He is doing it very loud in a way where everyone could guess that they are doing this, and there's no doubt that they are playing these games. And I would hate to be Jane Fairfax at that time with the man she loves making fun of her all the time. He also calls her complexion bad and awful. He says that she has a horrible situation, and he does not praise her very much, or if at all. It is very sad to me that he would call his fiancée these things. And I know that he says at the end of the book with his letter that he had to do this in order to not let his aunt know that he was engaged to her, but he also did not need to go to those extents. He did not need to do that, even if he was trying to convince everyone that he was starting to fall in love with Emma. That's not what he needed to do in order to be a good human being, at least. He didn't need to treat Jane Fairfax with such horrible disdain while he was in Highbury if he wanted to at least be a decent person while he was engaged to her. He could just treat her as like a nobody instead of someone he absolutely hated, because that's what I felt like it was at times. There are several situations in here where Emma is sitting with Frank and he's like, let's do this. And she's like, no, we shouldn't. And he's like, no, I'm going to. And he just starts going on and he's making fun of Jane Fairfax. And it is something where it's very telling that Emma is telling him to stop. And she's like, no, I don't want you to do that. No, that's too far. And he goes for it. In my opinion, he's enjoying the attention he's getting from making fun of Jane Fairfax. And I just want her to run away from him so bad. I also think that it's very telling that he is toying with her emotions. So he is keeping her on a leash, essentially, where he is like, oh, you're such a good girl, when he goes to visit her, and he's being very kind, he's fixing her grandmother's glasses. But then when Emma walks in, he's like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad you're here. I couldn't last another 10 minutes. It's like, really? Really? You are so callous to be there with the woman you supposedly love and her family, who, when you marry her, you're marrying the family. You are marrying her, and then you are spending time with her, and then you decide to be like just whatever else. It's a little harsh, and a little being maybe a little sarcastic, because he is intentionally giving her attention and spending time with her, and then suddenly he's going to go back to Emma. And I would hate, like I said, to be Jane Fairfax. It's interesting that in his letter, he claims that she was so upset that she tried to break it off with him. But I was like, well, she did break it off with him then, but she managed to be tricked back into getting engaged with him again. And I say tricked because I do think that he tricked her into getting engaged again, because I think this is not going to be a happy marriage. I think this is where she's going to be sitting at home while he's trying to go and get attention. I think this is not going to be a good situation for anyone involved except for Frank. And I think that she is going to be very regretful of her situation later on down the road. He treats Emma very poorly in the way that he makes her think she's in love with him, as she does state, oh, I think I'm in love. And yes, she gets over it, but she does think it. And everyone around her thinks that they are in love too. And so when the news comes out that they are engaged, Frank and Jane, everyone automatically assumes that Emma's going to be devastated. And thankfully she's not, but they all think it. So it's very fascinating to me that Frank Churchill is considered a good guy. And I think Knightley got it down to the point where he's like, everything works out for this guy. He has the right things to do when his family does not let him visit. He has the right words to say, and he is a villain when he has like 2 women wrapped around his fingers. Like, I'm definitely paraphrasing here, but still. So I think it's just so sad that Jane Fairfax ends up with Frank Churchill. I mean, at the end of the book, their wedding date is planned, but they're not married, I hope. And I know it's against everything that the world sees in this book, but I kind of wish that means that they're not actually married yet. But I do think that Frank Churchill is the villain. He is nonstop demeaning of Jane Fairfax. He nonstop is teasing Jane Fairfax. He's nonstop bringing up a Mr. Dixon, who he knows is not her love, and he is constantly mocking her, constantly degrading her, constantly devaluing her. And he does it with the intent of doing it in public. And he is constantly shaming her name. And I know that he said that, oh, it's a tense situation, but you don't need to do it that much as if you are hating her. You don't need to bully her in public. You can ignore her and that would be just fine. You could flirt with Emma and ignore her. You don't have to make Emma fall in love with you while making the woman you love hate your guts almost, or think that you hate her guts. Because that's kind of what it felt like in here. It felt like they were bullying Jane Fairfax, but Emma didn't want to. And I think that Frank enjoyed it. And I'm so scared in a way for Jane to be married to him down the line and see if he would treat her like that in an actual marriage and how that would play out. And I don't think it would play out very well. So I think that Frank Churchill is a villain. I think that he is one of those quiet villains who hide their true colors until it's too late. I think he's one of those people who are secretive about their true intentions, and they are able to put on a smile and to show the world their good side and to show the world their happy-go-lucky side, but they pick on the weak. They pick on the vulnerable. They pick on the ones that they know they can get away with. And that's the kind who are still villains. And I think that is what Frank Churchill is. He picks on the weak, the vulnerable, Miss Bates. He picks on Jane Fairfax, who he knows is vulnerable because she will do what he says, and she will not show his engagement to her because he knows that it will be detrimental to their potential engagement, and she loves him. So he's able to get away with it, and I think that shows just how much of a villain he is, because he's able to treat her like that And when she finally stands up and says no, he decides to go after her again. And I think that shows just what kind of a person he is. So I think that Frank Churchill is the real villain in Emma, and I am ready to stand by that opinion. So let me know down below in the comments who you think is the real villain in Emma. If you agree or think someone else, I'd love to hear your reasoning why. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new here, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.